Welcome. My name is Kelly Riordan. I'm a classical musician turned creative entrepreneur, and this is the best platform for musicians that are looking to shape their career by thinking outside the box.
Dave, thank you for your time today. I've been really looking forward to this presentation, or since your presentation at NAMM, rather, and I'm excited to dive into your very diverse career and tell the whole thing, but we'll start at the very beginning as always. Awesome. When did you first start percussion?
Well, I first started percussion. First off, let me thank you for inviting me to be here today. I'm excited to talk to you. I started percussion in fourth grade in elementary school, and the reason that I started, and this is, kind of a lame reason, but I got pulled out of class for half an hour every week. So I was like, heck yeah, I want to do that. And, little did I know that it was learning about music and learning about percussion. And my parents had no background in music at all. No one in my family played an instrument. My dad played accordion, but that was something that he did like in the church, but never really, sang, but never really played a musical instrument. And so, okay, I signed up for this class, and my mom says, well, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it, and you're going to practice a half an hour every day. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, let's do it. And, I hated practicing every day. All I had until seventh grade was a practice pad and two sticks. And I just remember sitting in my room and going through the basics. I never had a teacher until I got to college. Wow. I went to camps and did master classes and that kind of thing, but never studied with a teacher until college. But, I learned that. And then in seventh grade, I got a drum set, and I was so excited, and came home from school, and, like the typical middle school kid that had us a drum set, just played along. And back then it was played along with tapes. Nice. And my cousin went to school with Huey Lewis. And so she's like, here, you got to check out this group, Huey Lewis, and fell in love with Huey Lewis's music and played drums along to Huey Lewis every day after school. Just come home and play. And then just started, getting out there and doing more. But that was basically how I started, was back in fourth grade.
Awesome. So fourth through seventh grade, practicing on a practice pad at home, kind of anticlimactic.
Yes.
And then you go to band class and you get to try all the other instruments, of course.
Yeah.
But what kept you going? I mean, you're practicing a half an hour a day that your mom is, kind of mandating for you in I'm sure the nicest way possible, but it's not as exciting as when you're at school. How did you find that motivation, or was it still something that was exciting for you and you were kind of hoping for that next step in the drum set or something else?
Yeah, I think I was fortunate that after my fourth grade year, the elementary school that I was in actually closed down. The school was just, the community didn't have enough kids to support the school. Okay. So, and then we ended up moving. My father owned a lumberyard, and we ended up moving. I lived in Northern California, and we moved to a school district where music was an important aspect of the curriculum. This is, early mid 80s. And so I just remember the first day I moved to the new school, and they said, okay, you're in music class. What do you play? And I said, percussion. And they're like, great, we need percussionists. And just in middle school and in fifth grade, just learning about music, and then marching band. I loved being in marching band and just all the different things. And very fortunate in middle school, we had marching band, we had concert band, and we had a jazz band. And so it was just I signed up for as many music classes as I could, just so that I could experience all these different things. And so I think that's what really drove me. And then once I started playing drum set and jazz band, my dad was like, okay, well, I think now it's time to buy you a drum set. Again, they had no idea what it meant to be a musician. Versus my kids who they've been playing since second grade, and my parents just didn't know. So we went to the local music store, Gordon's Music in Northern California, in Fairfield, California. And my dad said, okay, let's look at drum sets. And so we bought a drum set, and that was my birthday present.
That's so cool.
In October, yeah. And so I got my first drum set and then started playing that. And, I don't even really play drum set anymore. I play drum set at the level of like playing in a musical. So I can play like not Hamilton, but like one of the older musicals, anything in the 70s and earlier. So, and I, play in church and that kind of thing, but mostly percussion and marimba and a lot of steel drum as well. But it was just, and then I got to high school and just took as many classes as I could in music. It was just it was my outlet, definitely.
Well, especially when you're coming home in middle school and playing drum set every day.
Yeah.
And your poor parents, like, of all the instruments you could have chosen at the beginning, too, they picked the loudest one. You got to come home with the drum set and get the tapes going. But it sounds like they were really supportive the whole way. And
definitely.
For a family that doesn't come from a musical background, to have a child that then kind of comes forward with this interest and this passion and maybe a little talent and gift, I think sometimes it can be scary. And we hear a variety of stories and how parents might react to that, but it sounds like your family was just all in. Like, if this is what you like, awesome, we will support you every step of the way.
Definitely. And my brother, who is 9 years older, he was so much into sports. He was he ran track and went on to college and ran track, and we were at every meet. And my dad made it a point. He owned his own business, and he made it a point. Like, whenever we had an event, he was there. So he was always. Both my parents were super supportive. If I had to be somewhere, they would go to the band review. And in high school, I was shocker, I was a drum major, and they were always there and with their camcorder and recording the competitions and carrying the drums. So they were always there. And then I played basketball in high school, and I just remember my father and mom were always at the game. So that's definitely awesome. Very supportive. And they knew I had a talent, and it was something I was really interested in. So
that's awesome.
They were very supportive.
At what point did you know this was going to be your career?
Pretty early on, especially when I was in high school. I had a really great band director, and I knew that I wanted to be a band director. That was like my first goal, was to be a band director. I thought, this is it. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then I get to college. There was a joke that I got accepted to all the schools in California. Like there was about 4 or 5 schools. So my band director made a shirt like the university, and then he combined all the schools that I got into. And then I didn't even end up going to the schools that were on this list. It was all the Cal States and UCs out here. And I ended up going to Cal State Long Beach. So I was raised in Northern California, and I was playing in the community college band as a high school student. It was an opportunity to play with a better ensemble, and the high school director of our crosstown rival was the conductor of this community band. So he was like, come out, we need percussionists, come out and play, you'll have a great time. So it was Thursday night or whatever, and so we played, and he's like, you should really check out Cal State Long Beach. This is the school I went to. Great school. You get away from Northern California, you'll get a little more experience. Check it out. So I said, great. And he said, I know the admissions person in the music department. Send me give me a tape, and this is before video and all that, right? Give me a tape, and I'll send it to him. And so I got accepted, and decided, okay, I'm going to Cal State Long Beach. So
Had you toured it or been on campus or met anyone before you applied?
Nope, none of that. I was just like,
awesome.
I figured I'm going to take a chance and see what it's about, and I can always go somewhere else if it's not what I wanted. My first choice before Cal State Long Beach was University of the Pacific, which is a liberal arts college in Stockton, California, kind of in the middle of California. Beautiful campus, but nothing around it. Just not a lot of opportunities. And I was thinking, I love Southern California. When we'd come down and visit we had family down here. And I just figured, I'm going to have a ton of experience to just grow up in and see what it's all about. So I took a chance and just, moved into the dorms, showed up the first day of class, and introduced myself to the person that became my mentor, Michael Carney, and said, I'm a percussion student. What do I do? Tell me what I need to do. And he had no idea. He had seen my name on a list, but I hadn't auditioned for him or anything. And so I showed up the first day. And my background, I hadn't taken lessons, right? I didn't even know how to read melodic music. You know, I was a true drummer, with every, it's kind of a shame that no one told me, if I ever had a bell part, I had to write in the letter so that I could read it. I was just, I played timpani, I played snare drum, and in school, at being like the quote unquote best player, I was always playing the rhythmic parts, the snare drum, bass drum, cymbals. So we didn't really have to read. And, at that time, the kind of stereotypical, like, okay, we need a bell player. Well, maybe one of the last flute players can come back and play bells. And so,
sure,
because they could read music, right? So that was kind of the level of the ensembles. So I get to college and it's like, okay, here's what you got to do. And I just remember working, going to the practice rooms. Living in Southern California, we had access to practice rooms 24 hours a day. So the practice rooms are actually, they're winger practice rooms, but they open to outside, so they're not in a building. So we had access to these rooms, and I lived on campus on the dorms, and we would go eat dinner and hang out for a little bit, and it'd be like 9:00 at night, and a couple of us were music majors, like, hey, what do you want to do? Okay, let's go practice. So we'd go down and practice for a couple hours because there wasn't really much else to do. And so, every night we were down there practicing, and I was just, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I need that work ethic that was instilled in me from my parents. Okay, I'm going to do this. And so I just remember, okay, here we go. I'm going to start reading music and, played
Was it
mounts.
intimidating a little bit when you got there and you realized that maybe that was something that was a little behind for you in the music literacy? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was great because I was always the big fish. I always was kind of the top student. And then I got to college and it was like, oh, I need to work to get to that point. And so I'm a little competitive, maybe a little more than a little. And I was just like, okay, if this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to work at doing this. And I was a music ed major because, again, I thought that I was going to be a band director. And, did the 5-year plan in college. And the problem that I ran into, so now early 90s, especially in California, music programs were being cut left and right. Long Beach Unified had cut all their elementary school music. It was just a horrible time for music education. And there was an initiative called Goals 2000. And it was like, we're going to write all these letters and talk to the Congress and talk to people and get funding for arts. But there was just no jobs. And I was like, oh, crap, what am I going to do? And so I decided at that point, I was in music ed classes and we were learning how to write letters to save our program. And I'm just like, I need to learn how to make sure 2 clarinet players can play in tune, and what do I do to help them? I mean, especially being a percussionist, right? I need to help all the other instruments. And it was just a horrible time. So I just was like, I'll finish the degree, but I'm not going to do my credential. And then at that point, Michael, my mentor, who was the head of percussion, he said, I really want to start building the percussion program and incorporate a lot more world music into the program. We had already had a steel drum band, and we did a couple African ensemble, and we did some frame drumming and stuff like that. But he's like, I really want to expand this, and if you want to be part of this, I'll help you get your master's degree, and you can teach some of the undergrads. And so I was like, wow, that's, what a great opportunity. So I ended up doing that. But I also kind of always thought I wanted to be in education. And so I decided for my master's degree, I would do a master's degree in instrumental conducting. So still doing all the percussion, but also taking lessons in instrumental conducting in band. So that was ending up getting my master's in that while I was still teaching, and then I graduate, and the program is now twice the size. And so Michael says, if you want to stay on and be adjunct, I'd love to have you teach. Yeah. And so I started teaching.
That's awesome.
So that was, late 90s. I started teaching, and I was teaching 15 to 18 students a semester. And then he goes on sabbatical, and I take over the program and, fall in love with teaching, but now it's at the college level. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. This is what I want to do. It's still education, but I want to do this. And so he comes back from sabbatical and says, he wanted to focus on other things in the program. And so he's like, you can direct the percussion ensemble and, still continue. Nice. So I basically had a full-time job as an adjunct, and, supported myself and my wife and I. And so it worked out really great, and, freelanced and did all that. I used to do a ton of steel drum, around Southern California, casuals and playing at hotels and stuff like that. And then I did that. I took a break, and this was, I think, one of the most important things for me. I think students today, they do their undergrad, their master's, and their doctorate, and they get out of school at 25 or 26, and they have a doctorate, but they have no teaching experience.
Yeah.
And so I took off 5 years in between my master's and my doctorate, and it just worked out. A lot of things just kind of, the opportunities were out there. And I'm a really big proponent of, you've got to create your own opportunities. People are not going to give you things. You're going to work for them. And so I decided to stay in California for my doctorate, which maybe in hindsight was probably not the best idea. I probably should have gone outside of California to broaden my experiences, but I wanted to stay. We had started a family, and I wanted to stay in Southern California. So I ended up going to USC, and I went and met with Eric, the percussion professor, and said, this is what my goals are. I want to be a college professor. How can you help me get to that? And he was awesome. I mean, to this day, he was actually at the NAMM presentation. I hadn't seen him in many years, and we had a great time catching up. And he was another mentor in my life, Eric Forrester. So we went and had coffee up in Pasadena, and he said, I have a doctoral student who's graduating. I've got an opening. If this is something you want to do, let's talk about it. And I said, yeah, no problem. It's just that I haven't been practicing like full time because I've been teaching full time. And I was also, at that point, the operations manager for the Long Beach Symphony. Mm-hmm. So I was, busy doing that. And he said, no problem. I'll give you a week. I want to hear these 3 pieces. And so in a week, come up to the studio, we'll go to the concert, and then we'll have a lesson, and we'll talk and just kind of see where it's at. And we just hit it off. I mean, I learned so much about my playing, myself, everything from Eric. And so I ended up going to USC. I had a good degree. And then my second year, H. Robert Reynolds was the director of the wind ensemble. And there was a opening to be his TA. And so I had all this percussion experience. And so I figured I'm going to try this experience with H. Robert Reynolds and be his TA and apply for it. And with my operations background with the symphony, it was a lot of organizing the ensembles and getting, making sure the setup was correct for the show and working with the concert hall. So it was a lot of the operation side. And so I ended up getting the TA and getting a full ride. And so it was like, great, so I did that for 2 years and then finished my doctorate in 07. And so now what? Now I'm still teaching. I was doing my doctorate and still teaching at the university. And my mentor, Michael, ended up having a long battle with cancer and unfortunately passed away. So we lost him. And so now it's like, okay, so the chair of the department calls me in and says, you're going to run the program until we hire the next person. And, obviously we want you to apply, but there's no guarantees. And I said, great. Ran the program for a couple of years. Everything was going well. The enrollment was rising in the percussion department. Everything was going well. Apply for the job, and I don't get the job. So it was like, oh, crap. What am I going to do now, right? So the chair said,
and academia is brutal in this way. I mean, you've been, kind of around it basically since you entered your undergrad. You've just been there, like either a student or a teacher or some combination, and now all of a sudden there's nothing left. Like it's just over. Did you start applying for other positions right away?
I had, through all of that, I had always been applying for other positions. Okay. So I had always done that, had a couple interviews. But it is brutal. I mean, and you just never know, but you also have to take the tactic of, yes, one door closes, but you've got to find the next door because, I had a wife, I had kids, I had a mortgage. You have to figure out
just a little pressure
going on. Yeah. And so I again, always kind of having that freelancer mentality, I think has really been helpful for me throughout my career. Just figuring it out. So like even with a band, when I had a steel drum band in college and we were trying to figure out how we were going to get more gigs. And so I sat down with Michael and said, how can I get more steel drum gigs? Cause he was working and doing he had a professional band. And he said, well, why don't you become like the B band to my band? And so basically you can, if you learn all the same songs, what I'll do is when I can't do a gig, I'll refer you to this gig and you can go out and play this gig. But the other thing that was great about it is we learned the same tunes. So when one of his guys couldn't do a gig, we could sub into his band. So it worked, or when he had to do a bigger band, maybe he had to do a part gig or something like that. So we were kind of like his group was Pandemonium. So we were like the Pandemonium B group and we had our own name and all that. But, at that point we had to also figure out like, how are we going to start marketing ourselves? We need to put a tape together or a CD. We need to record some stuff. We need to build a website. We need to, and this is, late 80s, early 90s, or sorry, this is in the 90s when the internet was really new, right? So we were still doing 8.5 by 11 glossies with a cassette tape or a CD to give out and market yourself. And so we just, I just continued doing that. And so that freelancer mentality of just figuring it out, like how do you do taxes? How do you build a website? How do you do all these things? You always say yes and then figure it out. I think I tell a story in my presentation that we'll talk about the EPK, which we'll circle back around. Just figuring it out. So the night that I didn't get the job, my chair called me in at the university, and I'll never forget. It was 6:30 at night. I got a call. My wife and I were at the grocery store. She's like, "Dave, I need to talk to you," and I was like, I know this is not good news. She wouldn't be calling me at 6:30 at night. So I went in, found out I didn't get the job. Okay, came home. Obviously I was pissed, whatever, right? Well, I knew there was a job open at Yamaha. I was a Yamaha artist and there was a position in the percussion area for a product manager. So that night I made a couple phone calls and talked to a friend of mine that was working at Yamaha, and I said, do you think I qualify for this job? Do you think I've got the background? And he's like, you may not have the marketing chops, you may not have the business chops, but you have the percussion chops more than anyone else that's applying for this job. You should definitely do it. Great. I applied for the job. It was a 6-month process, especially because during the summer, it's just crazy with vacations and then also DCI and all the traveling and all that. So I do the interview process, and the last step of the interview process was doing a presentation where they gave me a presentation on a Friday night, and then I had to go in and present it on a Tuesday. So I had to write like a marketing plan, a sales plan, put together a presentation, and it was on timpani. So I was like, great, I can talk about timpani all day. Talked about the history, where they came from, how they started on horseback, and they were called Naker. I mean, I went in all that. And then I just, again, started using my connections and put together a marketing plan. One of my best friends, who I worked with at Long Beach Symphony, was the marketing manager of the symphony. She helped me with a marketing plan. Great. I got a marketing plan. talked to another person, figured out what a sales projection was and how to do the sales. Okay, great. Did all these things and put this presentation together and just nailed it. And that next week I got an offer for the job. So it's like, okay, now again, one door closes, another door opens. And again, it's because creating those opportunities.
Right. And it's not that door just like opened magically in front of you, but there were so many things that you did to make that happen. Like you're calling people and connections that you already have through existing network and saying, here's what I'm looking for, or I'm interested in this position. Can you help me? Having other people help you put that presentation together. I mean, it's scrappy, honestly. Like that's what we have to do sometimes to make it work and to learn the skills that we need. But also, you're right. Like from a performance background, we don't have the marketing and the sales background, the sales skills. But at the same time, you've been marketing your own ensemble and your own services. You've been making these networking connections and selling yourself realistically over and over and over again for these gigs. It's just in a different context. So as you start with Yamaha, did it feel like there was a big learning curve, or did you feel like a lot of that gigging background had informed a lot of what you were able to do?
Yes and no. I mean, learning the words that I may not have known, like learning the terminologies that are used in marketing and the sales funnel and those kind of things. Having never taken a business class or a marketing class, I mean, I recommend that to anyone. Even now with, since we've gone through COVID, we're all used to doing webinars and stuff like that. Just learning the basics about marketing, going on Skillshare or LinkedIn, learning and taking some marketing classes and learning about how to tell your story and, finding ways to market yourself more effectively, going to presentations, meeting people, going to conferences, all those things, and just don't piss people off. Have good communication skills and networking skills, and just be friendly and don't talk crap about people behind their backs.
Yeah. Because
it's gonna come back. And the music world is so small. I mean, I was talking to, I met a gentleman at D.M.A, and we were sitting down, Will Kuhn, and Will and I were talking, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to IU. He teaches in Ohio. And he says, I'm going to IUPUI, a university in Indianapolis, and I'm doing this thing with one of the music composition faculty there. And I said, oh, is it Robin Cox? And he said, yeah. How do you know Robin? I said, Robin was my best man at my wedding, in 2001, and now is a faculty member at this university. And,
that's awesome.
He was like, oh my God, like from California to Indianapolis, but you never know. It is a small world. And I think the faster that people and students especially learn that, you never know. You never know when someone is going to hear you play a triangle and they're going to need a triangle on a thing, and or any instrument, right? I mean, it's always about just doing your best all the time, being a good corporate citizen, a good person to be around with, someone someone you'd want to go and have a drink with after the gig.
Yeah.
Being there early, all those things. I mean, it's all cliched, but it even now, my wife and I talk about this with our kids. We've got a 4th grader and a 6th grader, cello and a pianist. And the things that we have done, meeting people and talking through, I mean, our piano teacher played on my junior recital in college. And she, is now teaching our son piano, and he got advanced in the Junior Bach Festival for a 12-year-old. So, I mean, he is just like killing it. And it's because of these connections that we make. I mean, to go back to the point of this whole story, the connections and who you meet and who you talk to, and just continue that. And even now, like, this is going to sound, as I'm getting older, like, I went up to Rainer Carroll, who was the principal percussionist with the Los Angeles Philharmonic. And I had studied with him through college, called him up when I was undergrad and said, I want take this audition. Can I study with you? studied with him for a couple of years. Really, really great guy. And so I went up to him at PASIC and said, I don't know if I ever said thank you, but I just want to know how important you were in my life, and just thank you. And just having those communications, because again, like with Michael, we talked all the time and went to lunch, and I said thank you, but he's not my life anymore. So just to go back around, communication, being a good person, thanking the people that have helped you, all those things are really important.
Well, and what's interesting about this, Dave, too, I mean, you kind of joked earlier that you're just a little competitive, but in that competition mindset, which a lot of musicians have, I think it's a really, really common personality trait and common motivator for a lot of us, but it can lead to talking behind people's back. It can lead to some of those feelings of comparison or inadequacy or imposter syndrome, which is, I know, is a trending topic lately. But when we think about those feelings, those emotions that we're having, the competition can sometimes, when we're feeling a little bit more insecure, a little bit more vulnerable, bring out the worst in us. And I think this is a great reminder at any stage in someone's career, but especially if you're young and you're still in school, you're just finishing school, to be positive, to speak kindly about other people. And if an opportunity passes you and is given to someone else, it's also okay if it wasn't a mutual fit at that exact time. And to be happy for your colleagues and to maintain those relationships in a friendly, positive, professional way later in life absolutely does come back to you. Yes. With benefit and with positivity, because you're not going to be in direct competition with them forever. Like, school is a micro little world that we live in compared to the rest of the industry. Is that something that you feel like you learned in school, was to kind of set aside some of that competition when it came to relationships, or have you always been really good at that balance?
No, I didn't learn it until I had kids. I mean, I've always been outgoing and not having a problem talking to people, but I think I've learned it later on that in life that having those connections are really important. And you just never know. A person you play in an ensemble with may need your services for something down the road, and again, if you're just, I'm trying not to swear. If you're not a nice person,
it's all fine.
If you're not a nice person, you're not gonna get that next gig. Having those connections are really important. I always tell my students, like, I'm playing Long Beach Ballet this week, and so the first rehearsal starts at 7, and it was on Tuesday night. I was there at 6:00. I was one of the first people there with the other percussionists that are playing the gig, and we're setting up, we're talking. And then, we get to see all the other people that are coming in and introducing, like, hey, I don't know these violin players around me. Let's go up and say hi and introduce yourself, so that you just never know who you're going to meet and who's going to need a service from you down the road.
Well, social media is so cool for that now. And talking about, kind of segueing a little bit into Be Marketable, which I know we'll talk about in a bit too. Yeah. It's so important that you're maintaining those connections. And even if it's just posts on social media, if it's on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or wherever the heck you hang out, but in those situations, adding people on socials and staying in contact or exchanging email addresses and liking what they post and like being around and just kind of coexisting so your name is there, or sharing updates about what you're working on can actually make a really big difference. Yeah. Do you feel sometimes as you make those connections, do you feel like it probably isn't happening for you as much now, but when you first started gigging more, were you always introducing yourself to the violin section, or were you thinking, well, it's really the percussionists that I need to know, or maybe the brass section max, and then I kind of stop and I'll go forward in the ensemble? Yeah, no, the introducing myself to other people that has been, again, in the last 10, 15 years. When I was in college, it was, know all the percussionists, know the contractor, and maybe some of the brass players, because and then my wife is a flute player, so I would know all the flute players because of the proximity, right?
But in college, you meet everyone because you're in classes with them. But when you start getting out, you really want to just, hi, hey, how's it going? How's the wife and kids? Just those conversations are just important, because there's 1,000 people that can play a part better than I can. Hundreds, millions. I mean, who knows what the number is? But they know that I'm reliable. They know that I'm going to be there on time. I'm going to play my part well, and I'm someone that they're going to want to hang around. I mean, that is more important, I think, than anything. You do a symphony audition, and a lot of symphony auditions, you go in and you play, and everyone's at the same level, and then sometimes they'll invite people to play with the orchestra before they hire you, and they want to also know if you're a good fit for the culture of the group. So being having those skills and being a good cultural fit with the group, and not, culture meaning the just someone that they want to be around, because they're going to be around that person all the time. Are you a good fit with this group? That is super important. And I don't freelance as much because of my job, but that is super important, to be a friendly, kind person, and just say hi, get to know people. Those things are it's a cliche, but it is what will get you more opportunities, definitely.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think when we talk about being a nice person, we're also talking about being your genuine self.
Oh yeah.
Like not putting on whatever air we think needs to fit the situation, not molding yourself to whatever the culture is of that group. It's okay if it's not a mutual fit, but also part of that is it's going to be more fun for you when people like you for you, but also when they don't feel like you are pretending, because we all see through it. You meet people every once in a while where it's just not their authentic self that we're talking to in that moment. We all have bad days. It's totally fine. But sometimes in those situations that can break rapport just as much, that it doesn't feel real, that conversation, that communication. So being a nice person, but being the nice person that you are, not, mimicking someone else or trying to be a fit for a group or a situation that you're not.
Yeah. Being authentic. Yeah. You have to be authentic, because people will smell it out if you're not.
Absolutely. And working in a corporate environment, I think this is also very, very true.
Yep.
That those relationships are really important. And obviously you've done a great job of this, because you've climbed the ladder a little bit, so to speak, at Yamaha. So we started in the product, really specialized more in percussion and product development.
Yep.
Then what came next? How has your career evolved with Yamaha since then?
Yeah. So I did 4 years of percussion. I was a product manager for percussion. Right. Okay. So what that means is doing anything related to a product. So anything from price lists to websites to marketing, email communications, content marketing, also getting to have input on the design of instruments.
That's cool.
I got the job December 2014, and my first day in the office, I was in the office for half an hour, did like the onboarding, and then that afternoon flew to Chicago for the Midwest Conference. And it was like, okay, trial by fire. Like, yeah, exactly. I hadn't even met my team. Like, I knew my manager, but I didn't know the rest of the team. And I didn't meet them until Tuesday in the Hilton on Michigan Avenue. It was like, okay, hi, I'm Dave. Yeah. And so, we kind of talked. Yeah, I'm the new guy. We call him the FNG, the blank new guy. And I, because of my previous engagements, I was doing Nutcracker. So I was only there until Friday. And then I had Friday night, I had a Nutcracker, and, they worked with my schedule because I had already booked it months before. And so I was just there, and I ended up getting sick. I got food poisoning on Thursday.
Oh no.
And it was horrible. And sorry to sidetrack this conversation. So I'm trying to impress all these people. I'm meeting all these people, and then I get food poisoning. I was like, oh my God. So then Friday, I was only working like the morning. And so I kind of walked around and I was just feeling horrible. I got out to the airport. Actually, we didn't have a Friday show. We had a Saturday matinee. So I was flying back Friday, and I was just like sitting in my seat, and because I had just started the job. I had no status. I was in the back of the plane, I know, poor me, whatever. So I'm sitting in the back and I'm on the aisle, and then next to me is this wife, and she's holding like a infant, could have been like 6 or 8 months. And then her husband is deathly ill, and he's leaning against the window, and she's, the baby's crying, and she's like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, I have a newborn. I totally get it. I'm just going to sit here and hope I don't throw up. And so
quite the trio off in the back.
Yeah, it was horrible. We take off, and an hour into the flight, someone has a heart attack on the plane. And so they're like, we need to do an emergency landing. And so I'm just like, oh no, please don't throw up. I don't want to throw up. And so we do an emergency landing in St. Louis, and we have too much weight on the plane because they weren't able to dump any of the fuel, because when you take off and you have all that weight, by the time you get to your destination, they figured it out where you don't have all that fuel, and so you have less weight. So we land, and they're like, okay, they got the person off, everything was fine. I assume everything was fine. They took him off the plane, and they said, okay, we're going to need to call an engineer to come check the plane to make sure that we can fly, because we landed with too much weight. So we're sorry for the inconvenience. And we're just, the baby's crying, the husband's hugging the window and like in pain. I'm here sitting with my bag, hoping I don't throw up. And this is my first week on the job, right? And, luckily no problem with the plane. I got home at like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. And I remember I got out of my car and I threw up right there. And I was like, and then the next day played Nutcracker. So I don't know how we got to that story, but that
is so wild. Yeah.
Oh, I know. Well, so it was traveling.
Hard. Yeah. Well, it's hard too, because you're in that first week of the job and you want to be impressing everyone. Right. Like you feel horrible.
And you feel horrible. Yeah. Oh, so my first, after that, we, like 2 months later, they said, okay, you're going to go to Japan. And I was like, sweet, we're going to Japan. Yeah. So we go to Japan, and it's myself and my boss and a gentleman from Europe who works for Yamaha Europe. And so they show us this instrument, they show us this snare drum, and they're like, okay, here's all this thing, and blah, blah, and this is what we want. And so they said, okay, let's go on to the next thing. And I said, well, excuse me, is it okay if we play this instrument? And they, oh, you play? And I said, yes. I have my doctorate in percussion, and the gentleman sitting next to me.
A couple things, yeah.
Yeah. Christoph, who is from Europe, he had his master's in percussion. And we were like, yeah, well, we have our degrees in percussion. We would love to play. And so they said, oh, please come play. And so we played, and they were like, oh, and so then for the rest of the trip, it was like, oh, what do you think about this? Come play this. And so it was great. So that was part of this percussion product manager. And then about 4 years into that job, we restructured internally, and I was assigned to the education team. So that's where I currently am, is in the education team. And we had always, as part of our job in what we called band and orchestral instruments, we had always marketed to educators, because most of the band and orchestral instruments are used in schools, right? Absolutely. The majority of them, right? So we would travel, it was great. We would travel to football games. I saw some amazing football games, because a lot of the marching bands play Yamaha. So we would go visit and talk. And so we get assigned to this new role. And now I've been in this role for about 4 years now. And it's just helping educators connect the dots with anything from advocacy to the resources to help them do their job better, and just offering as many free resources as we can to help them do whatever they need to be successful in their role. So it's a great, Yamaha is an amazing company, great people. You meet so many awesome people, and you get to see, there's so many people that play Yamaha instruments. We had our corporate kickoff about a month ago, and for the concert, they never tell us who's going to play, and we've seen some amazing acts, and so we walk into the hall, and it's Tower Power. So we had a private concert for the Yamaha Corporation of Tower of Power. So how cool is that?
Nice employee benefits and perks. Yeah, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
That is so cool. That's awesome. And what a cool way, obviously, for you to kind of marry the two sides of you now that you've been working in the corporate world and getting to have more influence in the actual instrument design and specializing in percussion, but then also all the education that you initially set out to do, that was your goal is to be a band director and to share that education. So what are some things that when we talk about resources, in case anyone is listening and maybe this kind of calls to them, what are some areas where Yamaha does provide support to band orchestra programs in, whether it's the elementary, middle school, high school, or even in the university situations?
Yeah, so most of the educators we work with in our team are the K through 12 educators. Cool. There's another team that kind of works with the college.
Sure.
But we do a lot of stuff, anywhere from, we've got a blog that we publish, 15 to 20 articles a month on different topics related to advocacy and recruiting and retention and teacher burnout. We know that that's a huge issue.
Especially
we have a Facebook group.
Yeah.
We've got a Facebook group, so people can join that as well. And then we support a lot of organizations and partner with a lot of organizations, like the D.M.A Foundation and NAFME and ASTA and GEN, and I could say all the different acronyms. And we go out and we do conferences where we either speak or we have artists, Yamaha artists, that will give presentations, and we'll connect with them. And then attending the different shows and just meeting educators, going to the Midwest Conference or the NAMM show. The great thing with where we are now in our team is we are not working the booth per se. We are out meeting people and doing these sessions. So like I did the session at NAMM this year where we met, being able to connect with educators and just talking to them and seeing how we can help them, either with a product. I mean, sure, Yamaha makes great products and that's not an issue, but how can we help connect the dots with, California has this new Proposition 28. It's going to give $970 million to arts education every year. And it didn't raise taxes at all. It comes out of the general fund. So educators are like, how can we help them learn more about that so that they know how to access that? During COVID, we did, hundreds of webinars where we were talking about COVID relief funds, the CARES Act, and all the different acts, the ESSER money. So just helping educators with whatever resources we can. And if we don't know the answer, how can we find out that answer, or again, make those connections with our network or just the network of educators that are out there.
Yeah. And this is important, I think, for a lot of musicians to know that Yamaha's not alone in this, but they do such a great job on this, that providing education is a cornerstone for most of these companies, even if they seem more product-based. That there are resources, there is information, there is training, there's funding available sometimes too, through big corporations and through big companies, and they want to give back. It's a mutually beneficial thing. There's so many reasons they're doing it, but it is something that is available to musicians. And even when we're talking about an individual musician, there's the artist program, and there are some partnerships that exist.
Well, getting someone to come out. Getting an educator, or we have a program called the Yamaha Master Educators, where we've got these top people that have been in the industry for 20, 30, 40 years that can come out and help run professional development programs. But I mean, going back to your comment of the cornerstone, I mean, Yamaha in the 1950s started the Yamaha Music School in Japan. We talk about Yamaha is this big company, right? The largest music company in the world, blah, blah, blah. We don't make motorcycles. That's our sister company, and they are much. Yeah. I mean, we are related, but it's funny. Not many people know this, but Yamaha started in 1887. We learn all these things, and his brother was Kawai, and so they. I don't know the story about how they had a falling out, but that his brother started Kawai in the same town in Japan, Hamamatsu,
Wow.
Japan. But the music company started in 1887, and it wasn't until after the wars that they started the motors division, and it was because during the war the factories were used to make parts and machines for the war. So they learned, these instruments can also be, the factory can be used to make, motorcycles or boats or whatever. And so that's in the 50s. But going back to the 50s, our president at the time really saw that music education was so important, and without teaching people how to play these instruments, we wouldn't be a company. And so they started the Yamaha Music School, which is not as big here in the US as it is in Japan. In Japan, it is as big, if not bigger, than the Suzuki method.
Wow.
And it incorporates not just learning how to play your instrument, but it also incorporates improvisation and composition. And so from an early age, students can work through this program, the sequential program, about becoming a musician. So it is a cornerstone of our company to really help students learn more about music education. And there are Yamaha music schools across the U.S. Not as much as in Japan, but it is growing, and it is definitely a cornerstone of our company and very important to what we believe in.
That's so cool. And it feels like such a good fit for you, like a very natural progression in your career that you get to end up in that place with that balance. And kind of speaking of the balance too, before I get into that, I want to talk about how you balance the corporate life and your gigging, because I know you're still very active. But before I do that, you have seen the artist program from both sides. You've been a Yamaha performing artist, and now obviously you work with a lot of those on a regular basis. For musicians who aren't totally sure how those relationships or deals come about, or if they're looking for some of that sponsorship, if they are a performer or an educator and they're looking for more resources in that regard, what does that look like? How do you become affiliated with a company like Yamaha?
It depends. It depends on the relationship of where you're coming from. Are you playing with a major act or something like that? That's a lot different than the path that I was on. And John Whitman, who is our vice president of artist relations, he always says, go out and do something before you try to approach a company. Why would you want to associate yourself with a company just like, I want free stuff? Well, guess what? You're not going to get free stuff. It's not that. It's not that easy. Yeah, it's not really how it works. Definitely. And he would always say, like, if you really want to become an artist, then go out and do 100 clinics and find your voice, find what you're really wanting to do and why you want to associate with a company, and then approach the company. You go to the NAMM show and everyone's like, I want to be an artist. I want to be an artist. Well, number one, do you play the instrument? Because a lot of people will come in and say, they'll be kind of fishing for companies and like, well, I want to play this trumpet, but are you going to give it to me for free? No, it's not really the path. You need to find your voice, and whatever your voice is on that instrument that you play, then you associate, you get that instrument, and then go out and do something and really make a mark for yourself. Learn why you're doing this and what why it's important to you, and then approach the company, have that conversation, and find out, is it a fit for you? It's not like you're going to make millions of dollars and get free instruments. It is having a relationship with that company, and then again, that relationship, those communication, because down the road you have an association with a company, and then, well, they need a photo shoot. So how can I help you do that? Or they are doing an MEA and they need a presenter on whatever topic. Oh, hey, I can do that topic. Here's a video of me doing this topic, so that you create that, and you're not bugging them, but you're letting them know, like, this is what I've been doing and this is how I've been doing it. And making sure that it's a fit, because it's not always, a good fit, but the artists that we work with, and we don't work with a ton of them directly. We work with them kind of peripherally, and we see them at MEAs or the conferences. They're just amazing people, and they are part of the Yamaha family, and it is a family. It's a really great group of people that can play their instrument really well and are great educators and can help the next generation of people.
And I think it is important too to define this again as a mutual relationship. Mm-hmm. It's not just like what can Yamaha or any other company do for me as the artist, but there are benefits to that too. A good example, a colleague of mine, Drew Whiting, up at University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, when he goes to do presentations for band programs, and again, this is part of his university job, but one of the things that we had talked about recently was approaching Van Doren, because he plays the reeds, plays their mouthpieces, he's a Van Doren artist. You go to them and say, this is where I'm going. I already have it scheduled. I would love if I could bring some reed samples to the kids. I'd love if I could have some lanyards and some swag, but I'm already going there. And then sometimes those companies might even say, great, and also here's $200 to print off resources. Make sure you put our logo on it. Something like that too can exist. But you're right. It has to already be meaningful to them. They have to be getting something out of that, the brand recognition, the exposure, whatever that looks like. So having a package formed for them is important. So why don't we segue that a little bit into the branding too? Okay. And I would love if you would talk not only about the branding, but also how you are balancing all of this, because you have this really cool brand established for yourself that, yes, I work with Yamaha, and I'm also a gigging and active performer, and balancing so many different parts of your life, plus having a family and kids. Share a little bit more about what this looks like for you.
Well, luckily my wife is a substitute teacher. So it's very flexible. So if I'm out of town or I'm working or whatever, she can help out and do all the kids. And she's amazing. She does all the scheduling. She just sits down day after day, okay, what are we doing here? And how are we doing this? And who, so I'm very, very, very fortunate to have her in my life and with our family. We have a good partnership. So that's awesome.
That's awesome. Love that.
I don't gig as much, and having a family, it's nice to be able to say no now that I don't need to go out and play. I play now because I want to play. I've gotten to that point in my life where I can say, I don't need to go out and play a 4-hour gig for $75 at a bar and be home at 3 a.m. kind of thing. It's been nice to have the full-time gig and be selective. If I'm going to be gone for 3/4 of the day and not be able to hang out with the family, it's got to either be a good paycheck so we can do something else, or it's just not worth it. So that is, my criteria now is it worth it to be away from the family that long? And is it something, I'm doing a gig at the end of June up in Grass Valley, which is up at the base of the Sierra Nevada. It's 8 hours away. And we're doing Toy Story. We're doing the play along with the,
and, I love those gigs. They are so much fun.
It's amazing. It's going to be a blast. And it pays nothing. I mean, it pays next to nothing. But I'm getting to play with some people that I've known for the last 20 years because of the percussion community that I've just always wanted to play with. And we've been friends, but never had played a gig together. And we're turning it into a vacation. So it's just we're going to do an Airbnb. We're going to get, we're going to be up there for 4 days at the base of the Sierra Nevadas. And the culminating concert will be playing Toy Story in a park, cool. Right? So it'll be awesome. So fortunately I can do that and be selective about that. But, I think, going back to everything, I think freelancing and always saying yes and doing those things really helped me, in my career path. And doing this presentation that I've done, it really started out. So the presentation that we're talking about is, it's called Be Marketable. And I'm sure, you'll link it in the show notes and all that kind of stuff. It was a presentation that I did at the NAMM show. Just April, 6 weeks ago or so. Yeah.
It feels like last year. It feels
Yeah,
like ages
it
ago.
It feels a long time ago. Yeah.
Flying by.
And it's really just, it started out of, I was doing a master class at the end of the semester for my students at the university. And they were like, Dr. G, let's talk about, next steps. Because a lot of them, they were at the end of their career, they were at school, right? And they were kind of figuring out like, what's their next steps. So it's like, okay, well, let's brainstorm. Let's talk about all of the careers that you can do with a music degree, not including working at Starbucks, but in the music industry. And so we just started listing all these different jobs, writing them on the board. And then one of the students was like, Dr. G, how many of these jobs had you done? And so we just started like putting check marks, and it was like, YouTube. Okay, well, I did that because of my band. Composing, I had written some music and had it published. Arranging, so it was just like, not to brag or anything, but we were like, I was just checking off, like, that was, to be a freelancer, you need to have kind of your hands on everything, right? And so this presentation kind of turned, out of that conversation we had as a masterclass, kind of turned out of that. And, I go around, I do this presentation probably 5 or 6 times across the US a year. It really, I think, resonates with a lot of people because, you really need to be thinking while you're in school, you need to be thinking about marketing yourself. You can't graduate and then like, okay, now I'm going to figure out what my job's going to be. No, you need to be thinking about that while you're in school. And it's hard because, you've got all those performances, you've got all those classes you got to take, you got to do that. But you've got to figure out, what is your career path going to be, and pick something. And it may not be what you're going to end up doing, and that's fine. But pick something, work on that for a little bit. And if it doesn't work, then pivot and do something else. I mean, I'm a perfect example of that. I thought I was going to be a high school band director. And then I thought I was going to be a college professor. And then now I'm working for Yamaha, for one of the largest music companies in the world, right? So being marketable is just getting out there and learning as much as you can and creating your own opportunities. There are very few people that are going to take an audition and win the job the first time out. That audition, you're going to meet 5 other people who, you're maybe put together an ensemble that goes out and plays contemporary music because of, you met at the whatever audition, that you're doing. So you're getting out there and being marketable. So the part of the presentation is, getting out there, creating those opportunities, figuring out what you want to do. I love Jeffrey Nitsch, who wrote an amazing book. I think it's The Entrepreneurial Musician. We'll have to look that up. Jeffrey teaches at the University of Colorado Boulder. He teaches in the music entrepreneurship, and he talks about creating a bug list. And a bug list is when you are just thinking, and you're walking down the street or you're heading to your next gig, what are things that bug you? And write that down. And once you come up with your bug list, then see if you can solve some of those issues. That's what entrepreneurship is about, finding those gaps and solving those things, finding that product or that service that you can really market yourself and sell yourself doing. And, there's tons of them. So creating this bug list is a good way to start. Like, what are the things that really bother you, and how can you be the solution to that and find your kind of niche in the market?
That's awesome. And it's something that I think can happen organically. Like, that doesn't have to just be, walking between things, but if you're, obviously this is how you also relate to Yamaha a little bit too, in the product development side of things. There are things, I'm sure, about instruments that you've played, whether it's a snare drum or a timpani, that sometimes things just don't quite work right, or the tuning's kind of finicky on XYZ model of this instrument. And so having that information is important, so that when you talk to people, even if it's at conferences and shows, it's also okay to share those things. Like, brands are there looking for feedback. It's okay to be vocal about those things. Sometimes that's how relationships can start too. Not that you're going to be a jerk about anything, but
of course,
just having those ideas and brainstorming solutions to them can also present opportunities and open doors for you, because you're also aware and not just a blind consumer.
Right. Definitely.
That's awesome.
Definitely.
That is awesome.
So I think with the presentation, and there's an article that you can check out. There are some tactics that I would love to just talk a couple minutes about. Starting it as soon as you can. So if you're listening to this podcast now and you're in college, or you're graduated, starting today, go out and get a website. From the very beginning, you want to be able to control your own message. I think that is really important for people. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, whatever service out there, you don't own. It is good to amplify your message, but you don't own that platform. So if you are investing everything into one platform and that platform disappears tomorrow, then you're SOL, right? You can't control anything. So having your own message and using those services to amplify your message is a key. So go out there and get that website. And there's a really, really great website, and it's called Name Checker, and it's checker without the ER. So NAMECHECKR. I guess it was made during the Web 2.0 era, I guess, where we got rid of vowels for some reason. And it's just namechecker.com. And all it is a website, and you start putting in your name on the top of it, and then you push enter, and it shows you all the different platforms that are out there, your domain, the .com domain, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Reddit, Slack, whatever, right? Oh my God, MySpace, I think, is still on there. Yeah, it is. Maybe
Very
this is an old screenshot. Yeah. It's coming back. Yeah. And so you find this, and so what you want to try and do is you want to try to have a uniform name across all your platforms, so that no matter how someone is looking for you, they'll be able to find you. So for me, it's Dr. Dave Gerhart, Dr. Dave Gerhart on every platform. And if there's a new platform that I hear about, I'll go and sign up for that account just so that I can reserve that in case that account, Be Real is one of the newer ones, right? Which I don't really get, but I'm on it, and I tried it for a couple, and it wasn't for me. But I have that screen name, so in case going on, it is something. But I've been doing this marketing myself for a long time, and if you just type in my name into Google, 9 of the 10 things are me, and the other person there's another person, and Gerhart is obviously German, but there's a big Gerhart in population in Pennsylvania. And there's a Gerhart coffee. So there's another guy whose name is Dave Gerhart, not unusual, who has 2 kids. He's in music. We're like months apart in age. We're
parallel universe.
Parallel, yeah. I mean, he had a goatee, and he's a music minister. It was just so we always kind of fought after who was going to get whatever platform.
This is your multiverse alternate reality, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
But by using that website, you can really start to that name checker website. You can really start to focus in and get your name on every platform, so that when someone is looking for you, you can just say, I'm at whatever, and on any platform you can find me. And then it's also good for, if you apply for a job in the industry, and people want to look and see what you've been doing, you can just say, I'm this symbol, or at whatever, and they can find you. One thing I would caution you on is don't put a year in there. No one really cares that, you're only 22 or whatever. Just try and come up with something that's professional, someone to follow you on. I had a former student that had the best email address ever, and I tell this story. It was Lord of the Timpani at hotmail.com, which is the best email ever. But, think about that. Having that professional email address is super important, especially you get called by the LA Phil or the New York Phil. And they say, okay, so what's your email address? And you're like, it's Lord of the Timpani at Hotmail. and they're like, Lord of the Timpani. Well, our timpanist in the group is been here for a while. Do you think you're better than him? It's just have that Dave at davegerhart.com or whatever it is, so that it's a professional email, and you can have those other ones used for your personal, and just have a professional email that you can track and keep, so that you're, again, portraying yourself in a professional mindset and professionally out in the world, so that
it's
people take you
affordable
seriously.
to do this.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, if you want davidgerhart.com, buy the domain, GoDaddy, it'll be like, couple dollars for the first year or two. It can be really affordable. And then like what, $6 a month or something on Google Workspace, and you can get yourself a Google email that's davegerhart.com or kelly@kellyriordan.com. Exactly what we do. This is not a big scary thing. It's very easy to set these things up. There's tons of YouTube tutorials. Have at it.
Yep, definitely. And then just, using that site is really one of the big keys, is trying to have that so that it's uniform. Because you don't want, Dave the drummer, and then Dave _drummer, and then Dave @ you don't want to, it's like, follow me on Facebook at this, and then, and then your business card also has like 20 different hashtag usernames, and just try and find something that works, and get out there and reserve it as soon as you can. And you can pretty much try and make it as short as you can, but if you musician or whatever instrument you play, just so that it's obvious. I think that's really key.
Definitely.
And then build it, like you said. There are websites out there. Wix is a good website that's free. It's a good place to start. I wouldn't probably continue to use a free website if you're really trying to market yourself, because first impressions matter. If you're trying to sell something on a free website, it kind of looks weird that you're asking people to purchase something from you and you can't afford to have your own domain and your own website. But it's a good place to start, especially if you're writing a blog and you're trying to put your ideas out there. Sure, great. WordPress is probably the most popular website hosting out there. At one point I heard that it runs about 70% of the internet. So it's pretty, it's the community behind it is amazing, and you can do whatever you want. The more current and probably the easiest is Squarespace. It's a little more expensive, but it is super customizable. Mm-hmm. But again, we're talking like, $6 a month or $80 a year or something like that. So, don't go out to Starbucks or whatever one day so that you can have this, because you're promoting yourself, you're promoting your brand, you're getting out there and being marketable and building this, so that you can have a place that people can go to and see who you are, what you're about, especially if you're trying to sell something, a product or a service, music or lessons, having those videos out there so that it's on your website to really be able to show parents, like, here's some concepts I'm going to talk about with your son or daughter. Go and watch my videos and let's set up a lesson.
Absolutely.
Creating those opportunities.
Yeah. And creating a website does not have to be a one-time static thing. So don't feel like, and I'm sure, Dave, you've seen this with people too in your past students, you've talked about this, they'll hesitate to publish it, or they'll hesitate to start on it because it feels like this big, gigantic, overwhelming problem and project. If you have one page up to start, cool. Like, just have something that someone can go look at and find your information. If you feel weird that the whole thing's not live, you can even put like a little coming soon or more details, coming soon banner if that makes you feel a little bit better in the work process. But just have something and slap a couple reviews or testimonials or something on there too, and call it a day. You can always circle back. That's the cool thing about a website. It'll update in real time as much as you make updates and changes to it.
Right. And find someone else that's doing something similar and use that as a template.
Absolutely.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are so many, and I tell people about how to write a bio. Go find 5 people that you respect and start from there. People didn't learn how to paint because they just threw paint on a canvas. They learned from their teacher, and maybe they copied something from their teacher and they learned how to do that from their teacher. So go out and see what other people are doing and make it your own. Don't plagiarize something, but use that as a starting point and build off of that.
Absolutely. And there's so many resources available. I mean, tons of music school. I think Eastman even has a really good bio resource now. Just Google it and you're going to find plenty of resources on the internet. Thank goodness.
Definitely. And then, just start somewhere and do it. That would be the message for today. If you really want to market yourself, start today, do something, build something, and publish it. Seth Godin always talks about, you have to offer it out there, and you've got to put it out there. You can't keep saying, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. Put it out there. If it's horrible, start making it better, but start somewhere and do it and build something, and then start sharing it with people and getting feedback on it. Build something and then share it with someone that you respect, or one of your mentors, and get feedback on it, and then start just building something and putting it out there. SEO trick is you really need to publish on a regular schedule, so that Google will continue to search crawl your website. So if you have something out there and you want people to find it, the more that you can keep a regular schedule, like posting a blog post every Monday, or doing some kind of update, and how do you do an update to a website? When you play a gig, or you teach some lessons, or you go to a school and do a clinic or something like that, take some photos, make a post about that. Google is not specific, and then that Google is always crawling your site. And if you are not making changes, then the time span between when they crawl your site gets larger. And so if you put something up and then 6 months later you put another thing up, Google may not see it for 8 to 9 months, because they've come back to your website and said, oh, well, this person isn't really active. So if you are trying to build your SEO, the more you can do that, regularly posting, the better your SEO will be. Search engine optimization.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is an important piece too. You don't have to be, if this is not a priority for you, you don't have to be publishing all the time.
Correct.
But if you want people to be finding you organically, and this is exactly what you're saying, Dave, if that is a priority for you, if you want people to Google you and be able to find you, then these are tips and tricks to make that happen a lot easier.
Correct.
Awesome.
If your website is primarily for lessons and you want to teach in your community, having that website that you can give to a parent or a teacher to say, hey, I'd really like to work with your program or your son or daughter, great. That's totally fine. And then you can, put it up. But if you're trying to get outside of your community and trying to build a bigger brand, and you really want to, you've got this hip new way to do whatever on your instrument, or a really great pedagogical way to do that, and you want to get more, then you really have to be thinking about SEO.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I know in the presentation too, you had talked about the EPK. We kind of hinted at that a little bit earlier. Why, if it's okay, I'd love to jump to that, because I know you've got some really great information here too.
Sure. So, when I was going through the industry and doing trying to figure out how I was going to get endorsements, I remember my first endorsement was with a drumstick company. And I went to them at NAMM, and I just went to them because that was who I played their sticks, and I really loved what they were doing. So I went to them and talked to them, had a great conversation. Excuse me. And so I met with one of the representatives, and she said, no problem, send me your EPK. And I said, sure, no problem. I'll send it to you tonight when I get home. And so, I walk around the corner and down the aisle a little bit, and I Google what's an EPK. I had no idea what it was. But again, at that point, you don't want to be like, oh, what's an EPK? You want, okay, yeah, no problem. I can take care of that. And so at that point, I just learned, Googled it and figured it out. And again, Google is your friend for anything, for interviewing, for building a website, for anything. There are hundreds of videos out there for that. Yeah. So I, found out that EPK was an electronic press kit, basically a one-page PDF document that is essentially a visual resume. So maybe a picture of yourself, or definitely a picture of yourself, and maybe your ensemble, some of your bio information, where people can find you, your contact information highlighted at the top. And it's basically a way so that people can find out more information. A visual resume is what I like to think about it. So, creating that. And then there's another thing you can put on your website. For more information, download the EPK. Writing those bios, having a short and a long bio on there, having a good headshot. the pizza and beer method works really great when you're in college. Having your friends help you out. I'll buy you pizza and beer if you can help me do this thing, or trying to find someone in the arts department that is, a photography major, and they have to put together a portfolio just like you have to do a jury or a recital. So, hey, I'm looking for someone to do headshots of me, maybe putting a poster up in the art department saying, hey, I need headshots. Can someone help me out? And then creating that other relationship. And then who knows, that person may become a professional photographer who you may hire for when you get your wedding photos, right? Or someone else needs headshots, and then you can recommend them. So it's, again, that communication and making those connections is super important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's something, too, that needs to be updated a lot. We're talking about resumes, biographies, EPKs, your CV, whatever documentation you're keeping. A tip that I got, I don't know, a mentor told me this maybe 3 or 4 years ago, was put something on your calendar every 6 months that reminds you to update those things. Like block off an hour or two in your calendar every 6 months, have it repeat, let it just run automatically so Google or Apple remind you to do it. And then honor that when it comes. And another way you can do this too is if there's things you want to add, like send yourself emails for several months in advance. And when you're getting close to that time, like, all right, mid-July is normally when I update my resume and my CV. I've got this little stack of emails that might come in on July 15th of, hey, don't forget you did this activity, or don't forget about this presentation,
right?
Or, whatever those little things are, so that you can remember them, or, keep a Google Keep note or an Apple note or something, so that you remember those things, because it's easier than you would think, especially as you progress in your career, to forget all the stuff that you're doing on a daily basis.
I call it I have a folder on my desktop called the brag folder, which is a horrible, self-centered way to do it. But it's anything that I'm doing, I put it in that folder. Yeah. And then when I go to update, then I spoke here and I did this and blah, blah. And then I also have a manila folder where I keep all my concert programs and that kind of stuff. Nice. So it's also a great memory to like, oh, I played this and I did that. And so it's kind of a nice way to remember what you've done as well. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, as we kind of wrap today, if you could give maybe one piece of advice for someone who is early in their career, or just, maybe finishing school soon and they're trying to figure out what the heck to do next, and there's just this wide world of opportunity in the music industry and they're trying to find their place, what would you tell them today? What would be a helpful first step in finding that path forward?
I think find a mentor. Find someone that you can confide with and really have conversations, go out to coffee and just sit there and talk, and someone that you can pass off ideas on, and someone that will be honest with you. Someone that'll say, that's a horrible idea, or I love this, but, so that you can think about it. And someone that has been in the industry that you're looking to be in, or someone that you can really just get information from. And I think in the music community, everyone is very open to helping out. So, start with your teachers in college. I definitely, but then, find, maybe it's a private lesson instructor that that plays with the local symphony, or just finding a mentor, finding someone, because we were all at that point at one time. We didn't all just start like we got out of college and we knew everything, So finding that mentor, someone that you can really talk to and have those conversations, I think is key. I don't think I really knew that I had a mentor until, like in my master's degree. And it was Michael. Michael was my first mentor. And, we would go out to lunch every week and talk and play gigs together. And, I learned so much from him. So having that mentor is really super important.
That's awesome. And it's a great tip. And I think it's something that gets overlooked, that you go through school or academia and you have someone that you are seeing on a regular basis, and then you graduate and you're on your own.
Right.
And it's great to have that connection, either to a past teacher or finding someone else to guide you forward. That's definitely a great tip.
Yeah.
Awesome. Dave, this has been so much fun, and also totally chock full of information. We've covered a lot of ground today. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Absolutely. And feel free. I mean, if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm I'm out there and, glad to help out however I can.
Awesome. Dr. Dave Gerhart on all social media.
Right. That's right. That's right.
That's awesome. We'll link everything in the show notes too, including Dave's awesome blog about Be Marketable and kind of an overview of his presentation. But absolutely, I'd encourage anyone to reach out to him. Could not be more friendly and helpful. And I enjoyed your presentation at NAMM, but I've also just really enjoyed talking with you today.
Well, thanks, Kelly. I appreciate it.